To explore these two theories a little further, we'll first look at laws from reality. This is the assumption, the theory, that justice is found by understanding the objective situation. That is, that if we understand what's really going on, then we can work out what is appropriate as a response. And in that situation, we can consider justice to be a science. The study of justice, the exploration of justice, is something that can be done objectively and with certainty. Before we go too far, we need to have a clear idea of what we mean by science. The popular understanding of science is people getting around with lab coats and clipboards and so on, and maybe microscopes or what have you. But the classical definition of a science is really a study, an exercise in clarifying our knowledge. The definition reads, science is certain knowledge through cause. We always want to know why things work, where they come from, what they will result in. And so the exploration of that is this exploration of certain knowledge. By certain, we mean tested, and not simply speculative. Sometimes we can't know things with certainty, and so we might preface our statements about what we think is knowledge and say, well, we're not sure of this, but we think it is, and it's the best step forward, and we're going to test it with further experiments or further experience or whatever it's going to be. This certainty is very, very important. The notion of causality is also important for science. It's not simply a random set of correlations. It's rather that we are able to understand through either both physical and intellectual exploration what the causes are, how things are connected together. If I flick the switch next to the door as I move into a room and the light comes on, I could ask the question, how does that happen? What causes the light to come on? And that gives rise to the whole science of electricity and so on. And I say, well, there's wires connected there and there's all sorts of things going on. And so the light switch doesn't make light, but it causes the light to come on because of all of these other processes, including the electricity coming down the wires from the street, whatever. So science is this exploration of causality, how things are linked together. We're talking about knowledge. Now, knowledge is a curious thing because we often think we know things that we don't, and certainly the great majority of human arguments come because you have two people both thinking that they know something, and they simply, those two supposed bits of knowledge don't actually line up. The reality is that they really have two opinions, and they're trying to work out what's really going on, what is certain, what is tested, what is reality. Okay? And when they have an argument, in the best occasions, an argument, certainly a philosophical argument, is a discussion that is aimed to lead towards a better understanding of what is really happening, what is in reality. And after we have those discussions, hopefully there is greater certainty with our knowledge. Knowledge relies on this notion of justification. We simply can't go along and say, I think it's raining today in Melbourne. I'm not in Melbourne. But I can get knowledge of that by going to reliable sources and maybe checking a couple of sources. It could be going on to the Bureau of Meteorology's page or what have you, or maybe watching the next news broadcast, or maybe phoning up a friend who happens to be down in Collins Street in Melbourne and asking them what's going on. It's important that not just knowledge is not simply an opinion. Okay, it is rather, it's justified. It actually squares with reality. knowledge is justified true belief. That definition comes to us from Plato, the 5th century BC Greek philosopher, who was really the cornerstone of our modern science, our modern understanding of most things. That definition now uses the word true, and true is a word or a concept which has come in for quite a battering in recent times. What is truth? What is true belief? Well, truth is defined as the conformity of a statement with reality. It means that when I know something to be true, it's because I know the statement I'm making conforms with reality. I would say that there is a reality to the statement I am currently recording a lecture. It conforms with reality. I'm not sitting on the beach reading a novel. Okay. Some of you might think that I'm speaking a novel, but it's the reality which is really going on, and it's taking that reality, putting it into words, the description of it in words, and that then gets into my brain, and that means the idea I have is in conformity with reality. Okay. When we take justice from reality, first of all, we're doing justice as a science, trying to have certain knowledge through cause, and we're trying to have justified true belief as our knowledge, and that truth is the conformity of the statements that I'm making, or at least considering, with reality. So justice as a science is basically working through those different elements. Justice is inevitably about the relationships between people, and it has to do with the nature, the anthropology, what it is to be human, of humanity, that determines its properties, and that's why we started this slide series by considering the properties of the human person. What that suggests is that depriving a person of a human property is naturally unjust, which is really the proposition that we put in at the beginning without particular depth. And so now we're coming back and actually filling in the details of why we can say that, and why there is such a thing as natural property, and why depriving a person of a natural property is naturally unjust. You can't redefine it to be anything else. You might qualify it. In some cases, it is useful to kill people. Many countries, through most part of history, have been of the opinion that if one person randomly kills an innocent person in cold blood, that person has committed murder. Okay, that's the unjust killing of a person. And the punishment for that, again, in most parts of history and in most parts of the world, was to do an equal thing to the person who committed the murder. If the person committing murder deprived a person in cold blood of their life, then the community, acting through the state, through the government, not only is entitled to, but is actually obligated to, in order to restore justice, to deprive the murderer of their life. That can be sort of questioned in different parts of history and in different religious positions, for instance. But by and large, this idea of the society having that right and that role, even the obligation of producing justice for the society, is fairly much unchallenged. We do find statements like an eye for an eye and so on. That's a reflection of this natural justice. In some religious positions, the idea of harming someone in that way is discouraged, and that relies on other notions of justice, other notions of equality before the law. But basically it all sort of hinges on this idea that people are entitled to their humanity and so on.